Welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. On today's program, we are joined by Extension Nutrient Management Specialist Hai-Lin Zhang to help us interpret our soil tests. Casey installs a drip irrigation kit in a raised bed. We travel to Oklahoma City to look at an exciting tree survey in the city parks. And Barbara Brown cooks dried apricot and garbanzo bean soup. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, Tulsa's source for great gardens, southwoodgardencenter.com. and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
So we know our plants need food, and we've come to the nursery to buy that fertilizer. Now our soil report says we need nitrogen, but nothing says nitrogen on it. There's so many numbers and formulas and different names. There's blood meal, there's bone meal, there's sulfate. It gets to a point where you start looking at the pictures. This has roses on it, so I guess this is what I need for my roses. This has tomatoes on it, so I guess this is what I need for my tomatoes. Sometimes you just need to go to the experts. If you remember, we took a soil test earlier in the garden and we've got those results back. And joining me today is Dr. Hai-Lin Zhang, who is the director of the soil testing lab and also a soil nutrition specialist here on campus. Dr. Zhang, thank you for joining me.
Well, my pleasure to be here.
We wanted to walk the homeowner through what it means to get a soil report back and what this means. Our test shows that we have pH, our NPK, and then also our organic matter that we'll talk about later. But let's talk about the NPK and the micronutrients first. It says we're deficient in nitrogen. What does that mean and what should that level be at?
Well, first of all, I'm glad you took the first step, get the soil tested. However, a lot of homeowners need to do that as well, because without soil test, how do you know what kind of fertilizer to buy? You're wasting money. You probably have done some harm to the environment, even your soil. Mm-hmm. Okay. So nitrogen is very important. We do not want to build up to a high level. Otherwise, they just get leached into groundwater or get rivers.
Nitrogen's water soluble.
Yes.
So it will quickly wash out with rainfall and irrigation.
You're right. So basically, we try to spoon feed our plants, apply small amount in multiple times. And then this soil test report tells you need about roughly 1 pound of nitrogen per 1,000 square feet.
Okay.
1,000 square feet is about 32 feet by 32 feet. So you need to have a rough idea about the area you're going to fertilize it.
Okay. And what about phosphorus and potassium? It shows that we have plenty of that.
Well, because you have been gardening here for a long time, and then you use a lot of fertilizer. This is the same case for many homeowners. Okay, phosphorus does not move like nitrogen. So if you apply more, they just build up in the soil. Okay, eventually to a very high level. According to our calibration, all you need is 65 on a soil test level.
Okay.
When you get above that, you are just like oil in the crankcase will spill around.
Okay.
Potassium is similar to phosphorus. It does not leach as easy as nitrogen. We want to get up to 300 for lawn gardens. Ideally, you should test your soil every time you fertilize it, but for lawn and garden or homeowners, maybe every other year, at least once every 3 years is needed.
Okay.
To make sure your right on the mark in terms of nutrients.
And what does NPK mean? Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. What are those actually doing for our plants?
Well, there are 16 nutrients needed for plant to grow. NPK are the most important because plants need a large quantity. Our soil typically do not supply enough. Okay, all of them are important. Like nitrogen, it keeps the plant grow, give the green color. If you don't have enough nitrogen, it will turn yellow. Like this plant right here, this is probably not nitrogen deficiency, but some other plants will show some symptom like that.
Right.
Okay. Phosphorus and potassium are very important for flowering or fruit setting, disease resistance. If you do not have enough potassium, phosphorus in the soil, the plant will not do very well, like not have a vibrant blooming or have a lot of fruits like pecan. Okay, potassium maybe help build a resistance to disease and insects.
Okay, and so that's why, because nitrogen is responsible for the green foliage and things like that, that's why a lot of times we see, urea being applied to our lawn is because we want green grass. And then things like this that are marketed for, blooming have a high phosphorus level.
Exactly. There are so many different fertilizers on the market, but keep in mind these three elements: nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Okay, some fertilizers contain all three: nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. Those are the percentage of nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in the bag. Okay.
So if my report says that I have plenty of phosphorus and potassium, all I need is to find something that has nitrogen in it.
Exactly. If your soil test P reaches 65, potassium already is 300 or higher, you don't use this fertilizer.
Okay.
It's a wrong fertilizer to use.
Okay.
You should use urea. Urea is nitrogen only. It has 45% of nitrogen in it. It's the highest percentage of nitrogen fertilizer available. So like in a long case, you don't harvest any fruits or don't have any flowers, this is a good fertilizer. As long as the phosphorus, potassium is at a reasonable level.
Somewhat typical in Oklahoma soils that we have plenty of phosphorus and potassium, is that correct?
That's right, especially for mature lawn and gardens. And we have done a lot of summary. Our garden lawn soil phosphorus potassium are very high. Most homeowners probably just need nitrogen. Maybe in the early stage need a little bit of phosphorus and potassium. But if the soil test is showing you need all three of these nutrients, then you go out and buy the fertilizer with all three. Okay?
And in fact, sometimes people think more is better, but you can actually be doing not only environmental damage and paying out of your pocket for something that you don't need, but you can actually cause diseases in a lot of plants by over-fertilizing.
Sure, like phosphorus, 65 is adequate. One of your report has a phosphorus like 2,000.
Yeah, it's a little high.
So you have enough phosphorus for the next 20, 30 years.
We're good, okay.
Now, this additional phosphorus in the soil can tie up some micronutrients we didn't talk about.
Right.
So make them less available. Also, this phosphorus will leach into groundwater, sometimes get into runoff, get in a pond, and then trigger algal bloom. When the algae dies, use a lot of oxygen, then you have a fish kill in the summertime. So there are many, many consequences. Like nitrogen, if you apply too much to a lawn, the winter hardiness will be weakened. So you may have a winter kill. Or if you grow tomato plants, you put a lot of nitrogen, your plant looks like a giant tree, and you can't find any tomato there because you have a too good vegetative growth, not enough reproductive growth.
So knowing your plants, and also you mentioned this dogwood, although it looks chlorotic behind us, it's actually a cultivar that is supposed to be that chartreuse yellow, as you know. And so it's important to also always know your plants and know what nutrients they need. In our raised pallet garden, we're going to install micro drip irrigation, and it's basically the same system as the other. We've got our black pipe that is connected to our faucet, and we've also connected a pressure regulator, a backflow preventer, as well as a microfilter to filter out any impurities that might be coming through the pipes. We've got this black main line running across the back of our raised pallet garden, and to this we're going to attach our micro drip irrigation. And this has emitters that allow the water to come out every so often. And they come in different segments, so you can get them on 18 inches or you can get them on 1 foot spacing, depending on which plant you're growing. Now we're going to attach this to our main pipe here by punching a hole with the provided hole punch into our main line. Then we're going to connect this on-off valve into our micro drip irrigation. Once we've connected it to our drip irrigation, we then are going to install that into our main line. And you'll hear a snap just like that, and that lets you know that it is securely attached. The kit also provides these little stakes which allow you to kind of anchor those by each one of your plants. And we'll do that as we go down the line here. And then finally, we need to close the end of our line. And we'll use one of the goof plugs that's provided and simply close off the end of the line. If you find that your line's fallen out of these stakes, another thing is to go ahead and alternate the side that you install these on, and that kind of helps weave them through those stakes. We'll simply repeat this for every one of our rows here, and if you wanted to do this for a larger scale garden, you would simply make the same sort of manifold that you've created here, and just on a larger scale. At the Margaret Annis Boys Arboretum at Will Rogers Park in Oklahoma City, and joining me today is Brian Daugherty. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for inviting us.
You are with the Oklahoma City Community Foundation,
Correct.
The Parks and Public Spaces Initiative.
That's correct.
And Brian, we're here to talk about the new iTree initiative that is happening around Oklahoma City. Can you kind of tell us about how the foundation has become involved in this?
You know, the foundation's been involved with trees and tree plantings in parks and public space for over 25 years. Miss Boyes left a large part of her estate for the beautification of public grounds in Oklahoma City. I came in about 20 years ago, and as a horticulturalist and landscape architect, it was about how do we set these projects up for success? How can we do them sustainable? So we've done many, many things with different parks, different public space, different school parks. But this was an opportunity. We did a parks master plan about 5 years ago, and we identified the value of trees was all off the chart, the value of neighborhood parks. So this was an opportunity for us to turn around and to really inventory all those parks in Oklahoma City and really see how we can turn around what were the species, what were the values, how we could do it, how we could not only analyze what's been, we could look into the future.
So people want trees in their parks, but you never had a good way of creating a database as to what trees are in what parks and where you might need to plant more trees.
That's
but
right.
This database will now allow you to do that.
This database is incredible, and we probably couldn't have done this 5 years ago. Technology has brought it with Google Earth, with everything, where you can really do things. But we'll be able to actually sit down with the Parks Department and really strategically plan out where trees might be going, what species of trees, what the value would be. So there's just tremendous value to something like this. And we had opportunity, and so we are giving as a gift to Oklahoma City a $95,000 product, and the Department of Forestry has joined in with us to even bring it to the next layer, so they've put another 20-some thousand into it, and we really have a product that in about 4 months have something that will be beneficial on planning maintenance, on planning proactive tree planting, on looking back on what has been done, and really assessing, heaven forbid, but when you have storms, you'll be able to kind of predict and make some assessments on what cleanup might take and all by using some of the modeling tools.
And you're just starting this, you're kicking off it here at Will Rogers at the Margaret Stannis Boys Arboretum?
Right, you know, it's one of the 4 cornerstone parks, so it had a big collection, and Henry Walters had the Arboretum here years ago, so we thought starting here would give a real good place for the Davy Tree Company to be able to come in and to look at the different types of trees and to see, and then it will go on to the 153 other parks in the city.
Wow, that's a lot of trees. Thank you, Brian. And now we're going to go take a look and see how this information is going to be used. Mark Bays, you are with the Oklahoma Forestry Services, and you are an urban forester.
Yep.
And so here we have this information that's being collected. What all are they doing?
Have you ever been to the doctor and had the most detailed inspection of everything from top to bottom? Well, that's what they're doing here for all the trees in all the city parks across Oklahoma City. And it's just an amazing project. It's never been done at this size, at this level, ever in Oklahoma.
Wow, okay. And in fact, Stillwater did campus recently.
Yeah,
so
Stillwater has used some of this technology to do a lot of the trees on campus with one of the clubs. So yeah.
Very good. So what does this data mean to you as a forester? How are you going to be able to utilize this information?
Man, it's beyond beautification. I mean, trees are always...
We all know trees are pretty,
they're
right?
cool and pretty, and it's nice.
And
to
nice
use,
shade,
everything.
yeah.
But one of the great things about this is when you go out and collect this level of information about the trees, then you can come up with all the environmental services that those trees are providing, way beyond beautification. You can get air quality improvements by having trees. You can get water quality improvements, stormwater runoff. Trees absorb air particulates, and so they can reduce coughing and really improve the air when you think about asthma. Of course, they always produce oxygen, they take out sulfur out of the air and everything. And so what we're going to be able to do with all this information is we're going to be able to run some of the most recent formulas and algorithms on all these environmental services that trees are providing.
So we think about the value of a tree, but there truly is a value in each tree other than just the prettiness of it.
That's right, absolutely. We tend to call them that green infrastructure of a city. It's not the gray infrastructure, it's the green infrastructure that's so critical to making cities livable.
And so how does this affect, we've heard about Dutch elm disease that might spread through, and how do you utilize this information when you're looking at the species that you will select for replanting, and also if you lose trees?
Well, what you'll get is you'll get a species diversity, and so that'll tell you if you have more than one kind of tree in a population, if you need to plant other trees of other, and you'll be able to see, the kinds of trees and their overall health and condition. And so what the city of Oklahoma City will be able to do then is they'll be able to use this to actually care for and properly manage the trees that they have on the public grounds, because, everywhere you go in parks, you want to make sure that they're very safe. And so that's one of the things that they're going to be able to do is use this to make sure that those parks are much safer for
They're
us.
actually rating each tree as to the condition of it.
A condition class and everything in that. And so if there's any particular maintenance needs that those trees might have, a light pruning or something, Davy Resources actually already identified a couple trees that probably should come out pretty soon. So, the overall risk of just walking through the parks here in Oklahoma City, that it's being reduced. It's much better.
That's excellent. And if we have a natural disaster, an ice storm, a tornado or something like that, we'll also know the value of trees that we lost too.
And this whole iTree, it's this program that's free of charge. Anybody can go out and do it, and there's all different scenarios with it. I used iTree Canopy to help us determine how much tree canopy that we lost in the 2013 tornado that came through May. I did a before and after scenario, and they had lost 25% of the tree cover in that area. And
Down in more.
And so they're working hard to replace that.
Okay, excellent. So if I'm a homeowner and I have a tree in my front yard, I'm not a part of the city parks, but I want to know the value of my tree. Is there a way to utilize this software also?
Yes, there is. There's a way that you can go on this iTree software. It's called iTree Design.
Okay.
And you go on that website and you'll see iTree Design come up. You can actually draw a print of your house. They use Google imaging, recent Google imaging, and so you can draw up your address on that site. You'll see your house come up, and you can actually draw a footprint of your house, and then you can help. If you want to plant a tree, you have a whole list of trees to plant, and you can choose from that, and it'll show you the best place to plant that tree to give you the best benefits. And when you're thinking about air quality, if you're thinking about energy reduction, so if you want a big shade tree, it'll actually show you where to plant that on your house. If you have other trees of different sizes, you can actually plug on that tree and you'll be able to tell just how much environmental services you're getting from those trees too. So it's really cool. So now anybody can go out and learn, just how much more than beautification that the trees on their houses are providing.
We're finally being able to quantify the value of a tree.
Right,
Thank
exactly.
you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Today is dried apricot and garbanzo bean soup. Now that may sound a little odd as the weather warms up, but keep in mind something hot when it's hot outside can actually make you feel a little bit cooler. So this is also a lighter soup. It's not creamy and so on like we think of in the wintertime. So I'm going to start with a tablespoon of olive oil, and to that I'm going to add a tablespoon of butter. Now, one of the things that people often think is that butter has a fairly low melting point or smoke point, and so if I mix that with the oil, well, that's going to improve it. But in fact, it doesn't. It just lowers the melting point of other things, or the smoke point, excuse me. So I'm also adding about a half a cup of a sweet onion. Because we've got the apricots in there, it's going to not really be a sweet soup, but it's going to kind of hint at being a sweet soup. So we're going to let these, or you would let these cook until the onion starts to become translucent. Normally, if I was at home, I'd let that sit about 5 minutes before I move forward. Just to cook it on a low heat until that happens. I'm going to go ahead and progress with this one today. So I'm going to add 2 cloves of garlic that I've minced fairly finely. And this you want to not cook for an extended period with the onion alone. Maybe 30 seconds or so will do you. Again, you don't want it to turn brown, but this whole thing is going to continue to cook as the soup is made. So after the onion had become translucent, we're going to add some chicken stock or vegetable stock, whichever you prefer. If you want it to be vegetarian, then you'd use the vegetable stock. I've got 7.5 cups of that's going in. Also at the same time, I'm going to add about 2 cups of diced tomatoes. Now I'm using a no salt added variety of tomato. Your own home canned tomatoes would be terrific in this if you've got a pint of those left. And you could use whole tomatoes as well. You just want to break them up as you go. Also in here we're going to put a teaspoon of ground cumin, a teaspoon of fresh lemon juice, a teaspoon of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, about 2 cups of garbanzo beans, or if you're using commercial, 1 15.5-ounce can or 15-ounce can. And then to make it hold its namesake, I've got 1/3 of a cup of dried apricots that I've chopped. And these are going to go in here. We're going to bring it up to a simmer, and we're going to let it cook without the lid on so we can concentrate the flavors, get some of a little bit of evaporation going on here for about 10 minutes. So it's not a long cooking soup. We've got another step after that that's going to add a little bit more time, but the whole thing will be done within a half an hour. Gone for about 10 minutes. We're going to go ahead and add the quinoa. Now quinoa, you could substitute another grain for this. Remember that it's got the little coil around the seed that will unwrap as it cooks. It's going to take about 15 minutes, so that's about close to how much rice would take. If you don't have quinoa, you could substitute white rice or a pre-cooked rice. You'd need to extend the time to whatever the rice is going to need. We're going to cook this until it gets tender. It's already simmering, so I think I'm not going to turn it up. You might need to turn it up if adding that has knocked it back so that it's no longer simmering. At this point, we are going to cover it because we want to make sure that that moisture stays there so that the quinoa can absorb as much as it possibly can. So this is going to take about 15 minutes for quinoa. If you used another grain, adjust for the length of time that grain is going to take to cook. All right, this is ready now. Again, it's a fairly quick thing. You can see that it's a thin soup, which makes it great for summertime. If I can stir it up, you can see you have the garbanzos in there, the apricots, and the quinoa. This will actually give you about 5 servings. It's dried apricot and garbanzo soup. I'm going to spruce it up just a little bit. I'm going to put a little bit of cilantro on the top, more for color than anything else. It's already got the cumin in there and a lot of flavor developed, but this will just make it look a little bit prettier. I hope you'll give it a try. For Oklahoma Gardening, I'm Barbara Brown.
There are lots of great horticultural events this time of year. Be sure and consider these activities when you're making your plans for the weeks ahead. Next week on Oklahoma Gardening, Hailan Zhang joins us to calculate how much fertilizer that we need to apply to our gardens. We look at the design of a beautiful new garden space on the OSU Stillwater campus. And we have the poop on organic fertilizers. Join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.